And so Joel and Jonah, and it's debatable as to which one of them comes first. And then Amos and Hosea. Now Hosea is a contemporary of both Isaiah and Micah. And we're going to see a piece and a portion of Hosea's ministry here. And I'm not sure, I'm thinking that the first 3 chapters of Hosea are early in Hosea's ministry, and then it's gonna stretch out through the rest of his ministry. He prophesies for a long time. It says there in chapter 1 and verse 1, the word of the Lord that came unto Hosea. By the way, his name means deliverer, and it's very, very similar in the Hebrew to the name of Joshua or Jesus. And so it means deliverer or salvation. The word of the Lord that came unto Hosea, the son of Beeri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. So 4 kings he prophesies during their monarchies. And in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. So this would be Jeroboam the second. Okay, and so take a look at the map up there and get your bearings. But basically, Hosea is going to prophesy for 60, 70 years, longer than that actually, but yeah, about that long. And he's going to get the last of the kings of Israel. So he's going to start prophesying in Jeroboam the second, and he's going to go all the way through Hosea, which is the last king of Israel. Hosea is maybe one of the most unique prophets. And remember when we talked about Joel, we don't know hardly anything about Joel. We learned a little bit about Jonah and his temperament. He was sent to do something that he didn't want to do. Amos was a shepherd and a farmer. He was not a prophet. He was not trained as a prophet, raised as a prophet, but God called him, and it wasn't what he went to college to do, but he went and did what God told him to do. Out of all of those guys, this one, to me, this one kills me. This one hurts me the most. I can't believe what God told Hosea to do, and I feel sorry for Hosea. And it's almost, not quite, but almost a Job-like situation. Isaiah's going to have something similar. Ezekiel's going to have something similar. Jeremiah's going to have something, but probably not as painful as what Hosea has to go through. And so one of the things that we need to understand is that God was trying everything that he could to get Israel's attention, all right? He wants them to listen to him, to heed his word, to pay attention, okay? And they won't. They're following after idols. They're going after false gods. And so he's going to call upon Hosea not only to go and preach or speak to the people, but to live out a living parable. So you remember when Jesus cursed the fig tree, we talked about that on Sunday, how that fig tree was representative of the nation of Israel and of the fact that since they weren't bearing fruit, that they were basically going to be cursed by God as a result of that. Well, Hosea is going to be a living parable. He's like a play that the Israelite people can watch, and he's going to play the part of God, and his wife is going to play the part of Israel. And so we're going to see that put into action, okay? So it says there in verse 2, the beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea. And the Lord said to Hosea, go take unto thee a wife of whoredoms. What a terrible, awful thing. Now, what does this mean? Well, nobody really knows. We're just not sure. We're not sure if this woman was a temple prostitute or a former temple prostitute, which there were plenty of those in Israel in those days, because the disgusting practices that were tied to the worship of these false gods were practiced there in the land. Or if she was like Rahab, just a woman who had sexual relations with men for money. It's been called the oldest occupation, and the reason is that it's been around forever, and maybe that's what she was. Or maybe when he married her, she was a virgin. maybe when he married her, God knew what was in her heart and what she would do later on. I don't know, and as best I can tell, well, God just doesn't tell us, but God knows. So that should help us to kind of think about, you know, not only does God know what we've done in the past, and not only does God know what we're thinking about right now, God knows what we're going to do in the future. And if that's the case, then he knows that the seed of sin is in this gal. And he tells Hosea to go and marry this woman that he knows is going to be unfaithful to him. Now, in Israel, a person who is unfaithful to their husband could be divorced. They could also be stoned to death. And so what's so interesting is the way that God is going to handle this, or he's going to tell Hosea to handle it. So he says, go take unto thee a wife of whoredoms and children of whoredoms, for the land hath committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord. And so this is the way that God viewed his relationship with Israel. He viewed himself as the husband and Israel as his wife. And when Israel turned her back on God and worshipped false gods, God saw it as her committing adultery. And so he's going to have Hosea live this out in his life so that he can take and explain to the people through the life of Hosea, do you see what has happened to this man? That's what you are doing to me. Isn't it interesting when we come to the New Testament that we see the metaphor there of Christ being the bridegroom, of the church being a bride, and of the teaching, especially in Ephesians, where husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, gave himself for it. You know, wives, submit to your own husbands as unto the Lord. And so the metaphor, the image, the picture of the Old Testament was of the father being married to Israel. The picture of the New Testament is the bridegroom Jesus being betrothed or engaged to the church, and the consummation having not yet happened yet. The snatching away is still yet to come. That's when the bridegroom would go and get, when the father said it was time, he would go and he would get his bride and parade through town with the friends of the bride, and they would go into the wedding feast. And that hasn't happened yet. So he says, verse 3, so he went and took Gomer. And God bless her. I think Gomer Pyle came after her, but what a name. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, which conceived and bare him a son. So I think at this point in time, things were good. Things were a happy little family, firstborn son, and there's no questions about this. And so the Lord tells him, verse 4, the Lord said unto him, call his name Jezreel. Now Jezreel is a word that means to plant or to scatter. And if you think about how seed was planted, it makes sense that it means to scatter. So you'd take a bag of seed, you'd have your ground broken up, and you would walk and you would scatter your seed like this, and in the scattering of the seed would be planted. And so I want you to name this little boy Jezreel. Now, Jezreel is a very real place. There's a town called Jezreel, and it's in the Jezreel Valley, which is the valley of Esdraelon, which runs from Mount Carmel all the way down, and then runs basically into the Dead Sea, or right up against it, right into, well, it'd have to cross the Jordan, but it runs underneath the Sea of Galilee and right into the northern part of Jerusalem. And so it's this huge valley there in Israel. And if you remember, the valley of Jezreel, this is the place where Elijah prayed for rain up on top of Mount Carmel. And he prayed 7 times, and his servant came to him. He said, I see a cloud about the size of a man's hand. So he tells Ahab, he said, you better hook it and outrun the rain. So Ahab drove his chariot from the base of Carmel all the way to the little town of Jezreel, and Elijah outran him. Right? You remember that story? Well, that's where this is all taking place. This is a very, very important valley. This is where this runs into, I believe, the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is the Mount of Olives on the east, and Mount Zion where the Temple Mount is, and the Jezreel Valley kind of runs down and right into that canyon. And that's where it's all going to happen. That's where the Battle of Armageddon will someday happen. And so he says there, I want you to call him Jezreel, planted or scattered, for yet a little while, and I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and will cause to cease the kingdom of the house of Israel. Now this is going to happen in about 60 years. So let's go back and let's remember we studied through the book of 1st, 2nd Kings and the Chronicles, and we remember old King Jehu, right? And what did we learn about Jehu? He driveth furiously, right? Amen. So Jehu was God's man, but he wasn't a godly man. And God made him a promise. He said that his descendants would sit on the throne for 4 generations after him. Okay? So you had Jehu, then you had his son Jehoahaz, then his son Joash, and then his son Jeroboam II. That's where we are right now. That's when Hosea is prophesying. There's one more of Jehu's descendants. His name is going to be Zechariah. He's only going to reign after the death of Jeroboam II for a few months, and that's it. And so he says that 2 things are going to happen. He's going to avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and he's going to cause to cease the kingdom of the house of Israel. And so Hosea is pronouncing doom on the northern kingdom. He says this is going to happen. Now, we saw this with Amos. That's exactly what Amos was doing. Amos was telling the people, get ready, the Assyrians are coming. Hosea is saying, get ready, the Assyrians are coming. And the reason they're coming is because you have been unfaithful to your God. And so 2 Kings chapter 10, verse 30, if you're taking notes, is where God promises Jehu 4 generations. And 2 Kings 15, 10 to 12 is when the last one of his great-great-grandson dies, and that's the end of Jehu's reign and his kingdom. Okay, and so the first boy's born. Call him scattered, because I'm fixing to scatter Israel. I'm fixing to put an end to the nation of Israel. In verse 5, and it shall come to pass at that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. And so that's the place that the Assyrians are they're gonna come, and it's gonna be all over. So verse 6, they go along for a little while, Hosea and Gomer, and it says, and she conceived again and bare a daughter. And God said unto him, call her Lo Ruhamah. Now in Hebrew the word lo means no. So that's no whatever the other word means, and Ruhamah means mercy. So I want you to name this little girl No Mercy. Now, how many of you are thinking about or thought about naming your kid No Mercy when they were born? Right? Kind of a tough name. For, he says, I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. And so Hosea is naming his kids based on the pronouncement of judgment of God upon the nation of Israel. And Jezreel, I think when Jezreel was born, Hosea, he said, man, he looked just like me. And I think when Lo Ruhamah was born, he looked at her and said, I'm not real sure where that kid came from, because he's beginning to have questions in his mind about the faithfulness of his wife. He says, verse 7, but I will have mercy upon the house of Judah, and I will save them by the Lord their God. I will not save them by bow, nor by sword, nor by battle, by horses, nor by horsemen. Now, verse 7 is fantastic, because what it does is it reminds us of a couple of things. Number one, it reminds us of God's covenant. Even though the northern tribes, the nation of Israel, is going to fall, God is going to protect the southern tribe, Judah. And he says that he's going to do it. He's going to have mercy on them. And he says he's going to do it not by bow or sword, or by battle horses or horsemen. What verse 7 is a prophecy of what happened in Hezekiah's day. And you remember, in Hezekiah's day, Kings tells us the story, Chronicles tells us the story, and the book of Isaiah tells us the story. It's that important that the Rabshakeh came and he made all of his threats. And Hezekiah went and he said, go get the prophet Isaiah. And Isaiah came and he said, don't worry, God's going to protect this city. And then the king wrote a letter and sent it to Hezekiah, and he took it into the temple, he laid it down, he got on his face before the Lord, he prayed, and he said, oh, please, God, protect us. Defend your city. And Isaiah came down and he said, that's exactly what God's going to do. And that night, one angel killed 185,000 Assyrians in one night. That is what verse 7 is talking about. So not only did Isaiah prophesy what was going to happen, but so did Hosea. And remember, Isaiah, Hosea, and Micah are all contemporaries. They all lived and prophesied at the same time. Now, verse 8. The happy couple has another baby. Now when she had weaned Lo Ruhamah, she conceived and bare a son. Then said God, call his name Lo Ami. There's that Lo again. No. And Ami means people. Not my people. Hosea looked at that little boy and said, that one don't belong to me. I wasn't real sure about no mercy, but I know not my people ain't mine. For ye are not my people, and I will not be your God. Now think about what Israel has done here. You ever been in the jaws? How many of you ever been in the jaws? I've been in the jaws. To be in the jaws means that you are in trouble. That judgment has, that it is fallen. Mama has put up with your garbage as much as she's going to. And you have, there's an invisible line that mamas and daddies have, right? And you're not real sure exactly where that line is. But you're pushing it today. And you're pushing it. Maybe you got a smart mouth, or maybe you're I'll do it later when you've been told to do your chores, or maybe mom and dad are trying to watch something on TV. And sometimes mamas and daddies do that, and you're being loud, and you're not paying attention to them when they tell you to be quiet. And all of a sudden, wham, the hammer drops, and this fury comes, these red eyes, flaming fire. Anyway, that's what Israel did. That line. Think about who Israel is. Israel's God's people. Israel has the covenants of God, the promises of God, the word of God, the prophets of God. They've got a prophet of God right here that's trying to call them back to God. And yet they finally pushed him so far that God said, bam, that's it. You've crossed the line. Call him Lo Ami, not my people. Then God said, call his name Lo Ami, for ye are not my people, and I will not be your God. Verse 10 says, yet. You should circle that in your Bible. You should circle. Anytime the Bible says, but God, you need to sit up and pay attention. There's some awesome but gods. Man is sinful. Man has done this. Man is corrupt. There's none righteous. No, not one. But God, who is rich in mercy. And that's what that yet is in verse 10. I mean, he just says it. You cross the line. You're in the jaws. You're not my people. I'm not your God. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living God. You know what that is? That is a reference. That is God saying, you've crossed my line. However, I have a covenant with your ancestor. Turn to Genesis 32 real quick. And let's look at verse 12. Genesis chapter 32, verse 12. This is when Jacob is coming home and he encounters his brother Esau and he's scared to death. And God reaffirms the covenant there with him. And he says in Genesis 32:12, God says to Jacob, or Jacob says to God, and thou saidest, I will surely do thee good and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. This is Jacob rehearsing that covenant back to God. And here in Hosea, God says, I'm not going to show you, you're not my people, I'm not your God, yet I am your God. And I'll always be your God, because I made with you a covenant. And because I am a covenant-keeping God, I'm going to do what I said I was going to do, and that is that the descendants of Israel will be like the sand of the sea. And so what we see is we're going to see a time of incredible judgment upon the people. But it's not the end. God hasn't thrown them away, and he never will throw them away. Now here's what's fascinating. He says there, it shall come to pass in the last part of verse 10, that in the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people. That's just happened. He just said it. There it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living God. Now, where is that place? Where is that going to happen? That's going to happen in the valley of Jezreel. They are going to be cut off. The Assyrians are going to come, and they're going to take them captive. Okay? And yet he says that someday in that same place, you're going to be called the people of God once again. And see, the valley of Jezreel, that's where the Israelites are going to have a come to Jesus meeting someday, literally. And they are going to look upon the one whom they have pierced, and they are going to mourn for him as an only son, and all of Israel is going to be saved. I mean, it's going to be a massive revival that's going to take place, because God is not through with Israel. Now that covenant is forever, and he says it's forever. But those who sin will be punished, and those who die apart from Jesus Christ will go to hell. I mean, God's not changing any of that. There is no difference between the Jew and the Gentile when it comes to salvation right now in this church age. Okay? That's what's so hard. It's really hard for us, especially right now with all that's going on in Israel and our country taking sides, politicians taking sides and all of this. And we're going, wait a minute. We're supposed to pray for the peace of Israel, but gosh, what about this and what about that? Listen, this is simple. Israel is going to, they are going to come to a place where they recognize Jesus as their Messiah. They don't right now. They abide in unbelief. Matter of fact, when I was there, I would say that is one of the most New Age pagan places I have ever been in my life, that I've personally been. Every religion in the world collides there. It's just goodness, it's a mess, is what it is. But God is not finished with them. And we should be just like the Apostle Paul, Romans chapter 10. Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they might be saved. Because he is going to continue, he is continually drawing them to himself. And there are Israelites who get saved. I know some of them. But unfortunately, it's not this massive revival that we know is coming someday. Let me show you one more thing really interesting. Let's go to Romans chapter 9 real quick. The Apostle Paul, by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, quotes Romans chapter 9. And he says in verse 25, let's see, verse 24, Romans 9:24, even us whom he hath called, he says, not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. So this is the church age. The church is made up of Jew and Gentile. No distinction, no difference. Jew and Gentile were saved the same way. Okay? Verse 25, as he saith also in Hosea. Now that's the Greek rendering of the name Hosea. So he's referencing what we just read in Hosea. I will call them my people, which were not my people, and her beloved, which was not beloved. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there shall they be called the children of the living God. And so Paul sees the church age as the beginning of this promise coming true. And Paul includes us, the Gentiles, in this, people being called the people of God. People who were not my people being called the people of God. Now that is fascinating, and it's an opening up of the Old Testament by the New Testament to help us understand how incredible the mercy of God is. All right, let's keep going. Verse 11. Then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together. All the prophets tell us this. They're going to be gathered together, and they're going to be gathered together, Joel said, in the valley of Jehoshaphat, and appoint themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel. Now, I believe what verse 11 is talking about is what I just explained. That's going to be the day they're going to appoint themselves one head. They're going to recognize Jesus as the Messiah, but it's going to wait until all the way at the second coming. Because when he comes riding in on that white horse and he devastates the armies that are gathered against his people, the blood is going to run to the bridles of the horses, the Bible tells us. He's going to tread the winepress of the wrath of Almighty God in that valley of Jezreel. And at that moment, the Jewish people are going to go, that's our Messiah right there. They're going to recognize him. Okay? All right, Hosea chapter 2, verse 1. Say ye unto your brethren, Ami, and your sisters, Ruhamah. Now, wait a minute. I thought their names were Lo Ami and Lo Ruhamah. You see, here's the beauty of poor old Hosea. Even though God called him to marry a woman who was unfaithful to him, those children, it's not their fault. And he's playing the part of the father in this play that he's found himself in. And so he calls his children merciful, or one shown mercy, and my people. Even though the little girl's name is No Mercy, he calls her the one who is shown mercy. And the little boy, not my people, he calls him my people. And he says, Hosea has to raise the kids. Go talk to your mama. Plead with your mother, verse 2. Plead, for she is not my wife. You see, she's left. She's abandoned Hosea at this point. Neither am I her husband. He's put her away. He's given her a bill of divorcement at some point because of her unfaithfulness. Let her therefore put away her whoredoms out of her sight, and her adulteries from between her breasts, lest I strip her naked, and set her as in the day that she was born, and make her as a wilderness, and set her like a dry land, and slay her with thirst. And I will not have mercy upon her children, for they be the children of whoredoms. For their mother hath played the harlot. She that conceived them hath done shamefully, for she said, I will go after my lovers, that give me my bread and my water, my wool and my flax, mine oil and my drink. See, this right here, this would have had to have just infuriated Hosea, because he was a good husband and he took care of his wife. But she gives the credit to all of these other lovers. They're the ones that give me this. That's what Israel's doing. Israel, God gives them rain. God gives them food. God gives them victory over their enemies. God gives them the ability to make wealth. And they give the credit to Baal, or to Molech, or to Chemosh, or to whatever, the golden calves. Verse 6. Therefore, behold, I will hedge up thy way with thorns, and make a wall, that she shall not find her paths. And she shall follow after her lovers, but she shall not overtake them. She shall seek them, but shall not find them. Then shall she say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then was it better with me than now. And this is a prophecy of what Israel is going to be like. And unfortunately, this is what they've done. They've wandered. They've wandered, they've wandered, they've wandered, they've wandered. Every country in the world. They've been scattered for so many years, constantly messing with the New Age, messing with idolatry, messing with all of these things. They've just got this hodgepodge, mixed up religious thing that they do. But what does verse 7 remind you of? I will go and return to my first husband, for then was it better with me than now. Does that remind you of anything in the Bible? The prodigal son, right? That's almost exactly what he said. Man, my father's hired servants have it better than me. Luke chapter 15, verses 17 and 18, I believe. And he says, I'm going to go home. I'm going to say, Father, I have sinned in your sight and before heaven, and I'm going to go home back to that good life. Well, he says that's what's going to happen. Your mom is eventually going to figure out that she had it better here than on the run like she's been. For she did not know, verse 8, that I gave her corn and wine and oil and multiplied her silver and gold, which they prepared for Baal. You just think of God and you think of the blessings that he had poured out upon the Israelite people, and then they turned around and gave these sacrifices to Baal. God sent the rain. God caused the crops to grow. God makes the earth that actually grows the wheat, and then they cut it and they go give it to this false god. And he saw that as an unfaithful wife cheating on her husband. Verse 9, therefore will I return and take away my corn in the time thereof, and my wine in the season thereof. and will recover my wool and my flax given to cover her nakedness. And now will I discover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and none shall deliver her out of my hand. And that's what God did to Israel. He stripped them naked. The Assyrians took everything they had. They ate up all the food. They took all of the produce, and they scattered them to all these different places. The Assyrian Empire, what they liked to do was bring in different peoples and mix peoples up. So they'd take people out of their land and move them somewhere else. They'd move other people in, and what they did by doing that was they just assimilated cultures. And give it about 20 or 30 years, and your people don't even exist anymore. And so verse 11, he says, I will also cause all her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, and her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. And I will destroy her vines and her fig trees, whereof she hath said, these are my rewards that my lovers have given me. And I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall eat them. And I will visit upon her the days of Baalim, wherein she burned incense to them. And she decked herself with her earrings and her jewels. And she went after her lovers, and forgot me, saith the Lord. And so it just on and on. This is the terrible tragedy of the man who has an unfaithful wife, play acting, if you will, so that people can understand. I mean, it's real. Don't get me wrong. Don't make. I guess I shouldn't say play acting. Hosea has to live a life so that people can see what they've done to God. And verse 14, therefore, behold, I will allure her. See, because he still loves her. Isn't that interesting? I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak comfortably unto her. And I will give her her vineyards from thence in the valley of Achor for a door of hope. And she shall sing there as in the days of her youth, as in the days when she came up out of the land of Egypt. Now he's referring to the Exodus and the early days, the beginnings of God bringing them into the land. I'm gonna give back this land. The land and Israel are inseparable. They're inseparable. That's a part of the promise. It's a part of the covenant, and it's always going to be that way. But they are separable when they are booted out of there, right? And you're talking thousands of years. Verse 16, it shall be at that day, saith the Lord, that thou shalt call me Ishi, and shalt call me no more Bali. Now, those are Hebrew names. Bali means my Lord. Ishi means husband. And so it's a return to a good relationship. Okay? Verse 17, for I will take away the names of Baalim out of her mouth, and they shall no more be remembered by their name. And in that day will I make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field and with the fowls of heaven and with the creeping things of the ground, and I will break the bow and the sword and the battle out of the earth, and will make them to lie down safely. You can read all about that in the other prophets, especially Isaiah. This is a promise for what's coming in the millennial kingdom. The wolf and the lamb lying down together. The animals, the children playing at the hole of the snake, and nobody worried about them being bitten, because God's going to reverse all of those curses that this earth is cursed with. Verse 19, and I will betroth thee unto me forever. Now, can you see how he's telling Israel, I'm going to put you away for a time, and I'm going to let you feel the full weight of your foolishness, of your sin, of your idolatry. But I still love you. And I'm going to come and I'm going to get you, I'm going to bring you back. And I'm going to restore all of these things back to you. Think about Job. Think about what all he endured and how difficult it was. And then at the end, God gave him back more children, more stuff, And he says, yea, I will betroth thee unto me in righteousness and in judgment and in loving kindness and in mercies. I will even betroth thee unto me in faithfulness, and thou shalt know the Lord. See, that's what's going to happen, and that's what Joel promised as well, that everyone's going to know the Lord in those days. And it shall come to pass in that day, I will hear, saith the Lord, I will hear the heavens, and they shall hear the earth, and the earth shall hear the corn, and the wine, and the oil, and they shall hear Jezreel. And I will sow her unto me in the earth. Now remember what Jezreel means. means to scatter or to sow. And so the promise was, in judgment, I'm going to scatter you all over the world. And in compassion, I'm going to bring you back, and I'm going to plant you back in the land. And I will have mercy upon her that had not obtained mercy. And I will say to them which were not my people, thou art my people. And they shall say, thou art my God. So there's all three of those names: Jezreel, Lo-Ruhamah, and Lo-Amim. Real quick, let's look at chapter 3, because these three all go together. Then said the Lord unto me, go yet, love a woman beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress, according to the love of the Lord, toward the children of Israel, who look to other gods and love flagons of wine. I wonder if drunkenness and idolatry happen to go together. I wonder. So I bought her to me. You see what Hosea did? His wife had left him. She had gone off to these other lovers. He had raised the children. And God comes to him at a certain point and he says, okay, it's time. I go get her back. And so she has indentured herself. She's sold herself into slavery, I guess. She's owned by someone else. And there she is on the slave block. And so Hosea has to go and buy her back, literally, to get... This is the wife of his youth. This was this young girl that he married. Now she is just... Man, she's just ruined her life. And he says, so verse 2, so I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, and for a homer of barley, and a half homer of barley. Barley is poor man's bread. It's what you make poor man's bread out of. It's one of the cheaper grains. And 15 pieces of silver is not very much. I figured it up. It's less than $1,000 today. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like a whole lot for a human being. Verse 3, and I said unto her, thou shalt abide for me many days, and thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man. So will I also be for thee. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, and without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without teraphim. That's where they are right now. No king, no prince, no sacrificial system, no temple, no, none of that. They've been that way since AD 70. Afterward, verse 5, shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and shall fear the Lord his goodness in the latter days. So that's the promise. And guess what? In 1948, this started to happen. It hasn't happened yet because they're not seeking the Lord. They certainly haven't fearing the Lord and his goodness. They're certainly not there. But it started with their return back to the land. Now, how exciting is that? We're talking about something that's 2,700 years old, and yet it's still only partially fulfilled. So I want to encourage you, as we think about Hosea, I want you to think about the love of God. Even when we sin, even when we go away from him, he still loves us. Doesn't mean he won't allow us to face consequences for what we've done, but he still loves us. And I want you to think about this love that even in the unfaithfulness of his people, that he still has a plan to bring them back. That is the God that you and I worship. And by the way, it's better in the Father's house than it is with any other lover, by far. Father, thank you for this night. Thank you for your word. Help us, God, to see the message of Hosea, your unfailing love, even in our sin and our waywardness. God, that your love never ends. Your covenants never end. Help us also to see the consequences, God, of our sin and how they ruin lives. And help us, God, to just embrace Christ and follow him. And I pray for the young people here tonight, Lord, that they would follow him now and avoid the youthful passions and lustful temptations that are all around. Thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. God bless you. I love you. I'm glad you're here.